Hi class, you are finally in week 7 of Social Work 541. This week I'm going to go over a few things in the readings that I want you to know as you get started for your final assignment, assignment number 4, your advocacy activity, which is due on Sunday, the final day of class. As you get started, I just want to highlight a part of the reading from the University of Kansas about exactly what is advocacy. I think that this is important to keep in mind as you go forward with doing your advocacy activities, because we often use the expression advocacy or the word advocacy a lot without necessarily thinking about what exactly it means. In this context, we're talking about advocating for a cause or an issue that's important to you or important to your organization as a part of a larger strategy for social change. So advocacy is an active promotion of a cause or principle. It involves specific actions that lead to a selected goal. It's one of many strategies to get there or ways to approach a problem, but it is important. Advocacy can be used as part of a community initiative. It can be connected with other things. So you could be part of an organization that has direct service components to work towards that particular social change, but also has a strategy of advocacy to be working towards larger social goals. Advocacy is not direct service, even though we are advocating for clients in direct ways all the time. When we're talking about this type of advocacy, we're not talking about direct service. And it does not necessarily involve confrontation or conflict, although in some instances it may, depending on the strategy. Advocacy is about thinking strategically, thinking about how to craft messages and narratives towards achieving specific goals related to your issue. So for assignment number 4, you and your dyad partner are going to be selecting between the two of you a press release, a letter to the editor, an elected official, or a policy brief. One of you should definitely plan to do a press release, and the other of you can decide between the other options. If any of you feel particularly passionate about one of those, that's something that's not on that list, feel free to approach me about that. Or if you're both super excited about a policy brief, talk to me about that. But it would be good to see you choosing something different between each of you. You've already talked about these documents as part of your community intervention plan in assignment number 3, and now is the time to just elaborate them, to kind of build on them from your papers in the community intervention plans that you've already discussed. So as you get started, it will be important to think about specifically who these documents are going to be addressed to. Who is your target audience? That'll help you decide on how to frame your message in the most convincing way. What's the critical information that they need to know in order to influence public opinion or sway a powerful official to understand your issue or make a decision in your favor? Both of these documents should be thorough, concise, poignant, and impactful. Think about the language that you use. Think about action-focused language. Keep your points brief. Keep them focused on data. Keep them targeted to your audience. Help make connections for people to understand the data that you've presented, and then to be able to answer the question, so what? What am I supposed to do about this? You want them to walk away from whichever document you're presenting, whether it's a press release, whether it's a letter to the editor, a letter to an elected official, a policy brief, with some specific ideas for how to take your information, the data that you've provided, to answer the question, so what? What am I supposed to do next? If they're not walking away from your document with a couple of thoughts to answer that question, you have not succeeded in convincing them that there's something specific that they can do to take action on this issue. So at the very, very least, no matter what you do, when you're reviewing your work, ask yourself, so what? What should I do about it? And hopefully you'll be able to have an answer, and that's when you'll know that you're working towards a strategic piece of material for your advocacy plan for this community intervention. So, as I mentioned, these documents that we're doing go hand in hand with creating effective communication campaigns for advocacy tools. Our goal as advocates is to work to change the public conversation about our issues. This is super important to being able to affect change. If we cannot change the public conversation, the conversation will guide how people make decisions about what to do about our particular issue. So this is where the media comes in. This is where the social media comes in. This is where it's important to have stories coming out of the work that we're doing. How do we target certain demographics and certain audiences to be able to buy into our messages? These are the conversations that we need to be having about making the work that we do translate into a larger advocacy and communications strategy. The organization has the opportunity to take examples from the work, to take anecdotes, in order to translate those into the larger social conversation, plant ideas, help society develop a different understanding about what the issue or your mission, your organizational mission is. Look at the readings from the toolkit about how to use the media, and definitely get a sense of what this looks like as you prepare to do your assignments for this weekend. Some of the skills that are involved in this process are targeting and knowing how to identify allies in the community and media, how to leverage those allies, mastering technology, having a comprehensive social media strategy, utilizing every method of communication, including traditional methods of word of mouth and community outreach, as well as more modern social media platforms. So I'm going to go over a couple of the different elements that you could choose to use. There's a ton of material out there for how to do a good press release, how to do good letters to the editor, how to do some of these documents, and I'm just going to go over a couple of those so you have kind of an idea of maybe how to format. A couple of important things that I want to mention. For all of these documents, you can get creative. I encourage you to get creative. You'll notice that there's a lot of formatting that looks at the organizational logo, contact information, all of that. The idea for this project is for you to demonstrate that you know how to use these tools. So if that means making up an organization in order to have that organization do a press release, that would be awesome. If that means making up a particular editor or a particular event in order to showcase your skills in getting that information out there to the public, that's great. So I just want to make sure that you understand you can be creative. You're not actually probably going to send any of these documents unless it's something that you're already involved in or already passionate about. So get creative in putting them out there. So press releases are just one component of capturing the attention of media outlets to cover a story or an event that's important to your group. A press release is to capture the attention of the media in order to get them to look somewhere else at your issue, at the event that you're planning, to read a report that you're releasing, to get them to cover your topic in more depth. This is very important, that sometimes our tendency is to want to use press releases to kind of tell the whole story itself. But in a press release, we want to give enough information that captures their attention and gets them to look further at the event or the report or whatever it is that you're announcing. It's important to have an established list of media contacts who are interested in following your work. That's a springboard for you to be able to contact the media as well as engage other media outlets that maybe you have not already been engaged with. It's important to understand when the news cycle runs in order to send out your press release at an appropriate time so it won't get lost in the shuffle. This will help you kind of understand when people cover stories, when they're making decisions, when stories are getting turned in and all of that. So I do have a couple of examples of press releases that I just want to show you. So one that I like to show is one from an organization focused on workers' rights in Latin America. So you'll notice that this one's a little bit older, but you'll notice that the internet-based ones sometimes have different formatting, and you're obviously going to be doing a document one that's not on the internet. But you're saying it's a press release. You have a strong title. You're going to format it based on data. You're going to show, you're going to say specifically what it is that you're announcing. So in this instance, the organization is announcing the release of a new report that shows data that contradicts some of the public messaging around border security. And so they highlight specific pieces of data, as you can see here. Oh, not there. They highlight specific pieces of data that they want to make sure people can take away from the press release. Show some graphic information about apprehensions at the southwest border. And then after going over data that they have that they want to make sure people get, they provide opportunity for you to connect to the full report and the executive summary. There's always contact information for how to contact the organization, how to get further involved. So that is one example. And then another example is through the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, that they have a list of all of their press releases from current times, so you can certainly go to their website to double check kind of other options for different things that they are working on, different campaigns that they have and lawsuits that are going on, because they're great examples of press releases. They keep things brief, they provide background, there's a title to get your attention in, they go through a summary of what the issue is, and then different things that they want you to know and how they want you to act. They provide contact information and keep it brief. So that gives people an opportunity to cover that story if that's what they want to do. So feel free to check those resources out. So letters to an elected official. Many of you have probably written these already and have already been engaged with your local politicians or your senators, so you may have experience with this already. Formatting is important. You want to address your elected officials formally and respectfully. You want to understand your audience and include pertinent facts about the person to whom you're writing. What about their record tells you that they would care about your issue? Why should they? Be brief and factual. Make sure you include key pieces of data, but don't overwhelm them. Staffers are probably going to be reading this, and so it's important for you to capture their attention to be able to share it with the elected official in a way that is going to help spur them on to taking the action that you want them to be. Make sure that you include specific targeted asks. So what exactly do you want them to do? Is it something that they have some responsibility for supporting or accomplishing, or is it something that you just generally want them to be aware of? Make sure it's very clear what it is that you want them to do. I included an example here, again from the ACLU. This is a very brief and very good kind of list of tips for writing to your elected officials. So they also recommend that you keep your letters brief. They should not be longer than 1 page and should be limited to one issue. You want them to be concise, and you also want to make sure that your writing is clear and strong. That's me adding that, not from the ACLU. So state who you are and what you want up front. Tell them that you're a constituent. Express why it is that you find this particular issue that you're writing about important, and be specific. They recommend hitting 3 most important points. So choose the 3 strongest points that will be most effective in persuading legislators to support your position and flesh them out. Personalize your letter. Tell them why it's important to your community, why it's important to you, your family. Sharing a brief personal story can be really important in helping them understand why this issue is important to people that they represent. Personalize your relationship. Again, this is what I mentioned in terms of being aware of your audience. Do you have a history with this representative? Do you have a history of contributing to their campaign? Are you their constituent? You know, make sure that you emphasize these things if you know more about them. And then remember that your legislator's job is to represent you. Don't be afraid to take a firm position. Tell them what you expect of them. Tell them what you want them to do. You are the expert on this issue. So policy briefs are similar, but a little bit more elaborated than a simple letter to an official. Let me pull this up. I used to use a great resource from Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, but unfortunately the website no longer exists, so we've switched, but I do really like this one a lot because it keeps things very brief and also helps you kind of keep the format and focus of your policy brief. So I encourage you to go here to the writingcenter.unc.edu /policy briefs because this will really help you if you decide that you're going to do a policy brief. It's going to really help you kind of keep your work focused. So it'll tell you about the background of policy briefs, how it's different, how the writing differs. You're going to be thinking about, again here, your audience, the tone and terminology that you need to use in order to convey something in simple language while also demonstrating your expertise. Helps you understand the purpose and then also the format. So in a policy brief, you're going to definitely want to have a title that captures people's attention, similar to the press release that we looked at a little bit ago. You're going to want to include a very brief executive summary. So what is the problem? What are the proposed policy actions or the proposed recommendations that you're making in this document? You're going to provide data on the context and scope of the problem. You're going to show policy alternatives. So what exactly are the current policy approaches and what are the different policy approaches that people should be taking? And you're going to make policy recommendations. If people need additional information, you're going to reference where they can get that information. And then if you feel like it's in the context and scope of your problem, you may want to show some data in graphic form. So if there's a compelling graph that you've compiled of the data or some compelling graphic visualization of data, that would be really good to include because it helps keep things focused. So I recommend checking out this document to be able to do a policy brief. Again, this is a very quick overview of some options for resources that you can use to check these out, and I will attach this document so in case you need to access the links and aren't able to see them during this recording. Finally, please complete your course evaluations this week. I appreciate your feedback and I appreciate all of your participation during this course. I do ask that you take a minute to do the evaluations. The feedback is always useful in helping me improve and helping the course improve and the program improve overall. If you have any questions as you go forward this week and wrap up your final assignment, please don't hesitate to let me know. Thanks, everybody.